You can begin. All right. Good morning, everyone. Officially, thank you for joining us today. We are excited. I am excited in particular. The conversation today with Darryl Webster, successfully coping with the new normal. I find myself having these conversations regularly. In fact, I had a conversation 2 days ago with two of my professors, as I'm also in school full-time, in addition to working full-time, of what does normal look like for me now and how do I adjust as I'm changing with the world that I'm currently living in. So what I am going to do first is introduce you all to Darryl Webster, and then you will hear from Mrs. Walters, and then the voice after that will be none other than Darryl Webster. So Darryl R. Webster is a 30-year veteran clinical social worker at high poverty schools in the District of Columbia. He specializes in childhood trauma and sensitive, responsive treatment of students in high poverty schools. Mr. Webster focuses on building relationships, trust with students and parents, providing high effective behavioral support for all students. He is a graduate of George Washington University and received the prestigious Patricia Roberts Harris Fellowship at Catholic University of America, where he earned his master's degree in social work. He is an award-winning social worker that includes the 2018 Social Worker of the Year, Maryland chapter of NASW, 2006 National Father of the Year, All-Star Dad Award, 2006, the Morris and Gwendolyn and Cat Fitz Foundation Awards for Distinguished DC Government Employee, Washingtonian of the Year Award. He has also appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show and the CBS Early Morning Show. Darryl Webster is the author of I Thought I Was Going Crazy, Overcoming Stress, Anxiety, and Depression, which is a true story of his own personal reflection of his childhood while growing up in a world of social stressors. He is married to his high school sweetheart, and they have 3 children. Mrs. Walters?
Well, all I have to say after that is that I'm so humbled to be in the company of such a distinguished individual. I am excited and eager to hear what Mr. Webster has to say today, and I know that his presentation will give light to his many experiences and how we all can keep our emotional selves in balance and healthy. So thank you, Mr. Webster, for being with us today. I also want to say to our audience, for those who have know about our partnership with the Howard University School of Social Work, Mr. Webster will be supervising the candidate, the Masters of Social Work candidate, who will be working with the families who have signed up. So thank you. And here, the floor is yours, Mr. Webster.
Okay, great. Good morning, and I just want to say thank you so much, Ms. Pearson, for that wonderful introduction. And good afternoon to our scholars, parents, and Mrs. Welters and the AnBryce Foundation staff. This is a super honor for me to give this presentation today. I have so much respect for you, Mrs. Welters, and your husband for all that you've done since 1995, helping countless children and youth through your AnBryce Foundation programs. Today's presentation is Successfully Coping with the New Normal. The purpose of this presentation is to provide some strategies that students and parents can use to manage stress during these challenging times. The strategies I'm going to share with you are proven to minimize stress. These strategies help me stay positive during the uncertainty of COVID. I've used them to help my wife and my children to cope as well. And I've also used them with my students at my school. I hope you find them useful. I'm sure some of you are using some of these strategies already to manage stress. These are some of the topics I'll cover for the next hour. The agenda. I'm going to share a few fun facts about my family. I hope you guys will enjoy that. I'm going to have a fun check-in with everyone. We're going to see how you guys are feeling this afternoon. I'm going to touch on how we can adapt to more effectively ways of the new normal because there's so much going on and we need those strategies. I asked my daughter, Taylor, to share her reflection on the strategy she used in terms of what worked for her during COVID. And then I'll cover the other agenda items as well in terms of common reactions that we go through in the new normal, staying mentally healthy during the pandemic. I wrote an article back in March when the pandemic first started because I was very hopeful that we would get out of it. And a lot of people talked highly about the strategy that I use. I'm going to go over that. Then I have another fun activity called the Rose, Thorn, and Bud, which is a great mindful reflection activity. I'm sure some of you guys have done that before. And then I'm going to give some strategies to the parents and how to support their children with the new normal. And then some brief strategies, principles of communication, how parents can not only talk to their kids, but how they can talk to their spouses as well. And then we're going to wrap up with the question and answer period. I'm the father of 3 children. When I became a father, I wanted to be the best father I could be. I grew up in the inner city and I didn't have my mother and father in my life. My grandparents raised me. They were very poor. I put a lot of pressure on myself to be a perfect dad because I knew what it felt like not to have a father in my life. But I wasn't a perfect father, but I was a good enough father to raise 3 successful children. As parents, we all want our children to be happy, to grow up to be successful in life. And we all go through things good and bad as parents as well as children. Life is stressful, guys. We know that sometimes. This unprecedented events like COVID-19, and for those who were around when September 11th occurred, caused a lot of stress, pain, and was disorienting for a lot of people. And in some cases, these events shattered lives. When we don't know how to cope with them, we suffer. My goal when September the 11th happened and COVID-19 happened was to help my family and also other children that I work with. I wanted my kids to grow up to be resilient, and I think I've done that. My oldest son, a fun fact, Christian Webster, he attended the Landon School, a prestigious private school in Bethesda, Maryland. He graduated from Harvard in 2013, and he made history as the all-time winningest men's basketball player. He's currently one of the top men's basketball coaches in the ACC conference at Virginia Tech. And I'm so proud of him because we've come so far from where we were many years ago. My oldest daughter, Tiffany, won 2 scholarships. She attended the St. Andrews Episcopal School in Potomac, Maryland. Then she got a scholarship to Hampton University, and she had some challenges there. I transferred her out, and she was fortunate enough to win another scholarship to the Quinnipiac University, and now she's a successful real estate agent in the DMV. My youngest daughter, the last of the Mohicans, I call her, Taylor, she earned a scholarship to UNCW last year. She felt isolated and alone being away from home during COVID. She was very stressed out, and she's going to share her thoughts on that in a minute. And it was hard for her emotionally. I wanted her to come home, so when at the end of the year, I pitched her to a lot of universities, and thank God she got a scholarship to my alma mater, George Washington University. So guys, let me check in with you for a minute and see how you guys are feeling. Let's look at the memes on the screen. How are you guys feeling? Do you feel giddy like Kevin Hart? My youngest daughter loves Kevin Hart. Number 1, or do you feel like number 2, Kanye West, kind of confused right now? Or are you kind of angry this morning like Tiffany Haddish? Or do you feel more like number 4, Naomi Osaka, kind of emotional this morning? Or The Rock, are you deep in thought right now with a lot on your mind? Or do you feel like my favorite basketball player, Stephen Curry? Or do you feel, which is number 6, or do you feel like Justin Bieber, pretty happy? Or do you feel like my daughter's favorite entertainer and singer in all the world, awesome, like Beyonce? Please post your numbers in the chat. We'd like to know how you guys are feeling this morning. If you're feeling more than one emotional feeling, put that in the chat box as well. And I would like Elaine or Ms. Pearson to read off some of those responses. Because I'm feeling right now, I'm feeling happy like Justin Bieber, and I'm feeling like I got this, like Stephen Curry. I'd like to know how you guys are feeling. Okay.
I see ones and fives and 7, 1, 5, 5, 7,
Great.
5, 6, 5, 8, 7, feeling wonderful and hopeful.
That's awesome. Thank you guys for those comments. You guys, I'm glad to see that a lot of you are in a good mood. And I'm also kind of deep in thought too at times, like The Rock. These challenging times kind of take us there. So I understand that as well. Let's move on. When COVID entered our lives 19 months ago, some of us didn't know how to feel. My wife and daughter had a hard time adapting to the new normal. My wife was confused, she was scared, and she didn't know what to expect. She said, "This is terrible. Everything is shutting down. People are hoarding food, toilet paper, Lysol. Restaurants and other stores were closing." She was sent home from work like many people, and my daughter was sent home from school. The streets were empty. We saw death toll rising every day. I remember, guys, when my daughter first, the one that's, she was in high school, Taylor, she was a senior at Georgetown Visitation when all this happened. And we went for a ride one day and she started crying. She was like, "Daddy, oh my God, my senior year is ruined." She said, "I waited so long for the prom, for graduation, for all these senior dances." She said, "Life is just so unfair. It's over." And my wife, I remember her sitting on the couch almost just shaking, and I didn't know what was going on. I said, what is wrong?" She said, "This is terrible." And you would have thought it was the end of the world. And I used my social work skills and therapy skills to help my wife and my daughter to co-regulate. If you look in the slide above, there's a picture in the far left corner of Dr. Makumbi and me. Dr. Makumbi was a dear friend of mine at a DC public school where I had worked. And he was the first DC public school employee to die from COVID on the job. And I missed him dearly. And so I suffered a great loss when Dr. Makumbi died, as well as some friends. But I understood that I had to keep my family together, and I had to keep my wife and my daughter from going crazy. And some of the strategies that I'm going to go over are the strategies that I use to kind of keep them sane and to keep them functioning, especially my youngest daughter, because being young, our children need the adults to help them what they call co-regulate, to maintain their emotions. Their brains don't fully develop until they're 25. So they need an adult who has awareness and skills to basically help them co-regulate their emotions, especially during these difficult times like COVID. So I asked my daughter, guys, to give us some reflection about what she was going through during COVID so that the students could understand her mindset and the parents could understand the types of strategies that I gave her to help her co-regulate and help her to maintain her emotions. The questions that you're going to see on the screen are the questions that I put toward her, and she's going to be answering the questions.
It was really challenging just because COVID was an unprecedented time. Like, no one knew what was going on. So for me, I think the biggest thing was just uncertainty of like whether or not I was going to go back to school, because they kept saying, "Oh, you'll go back in 2 weeks," and then they pushed back to a month, and then eventually we just didn't go back at all. And the worst thing for me was that it was my senior year, so I missed out on a lot of senior activities like prom, and we didn't have a normal graduation. So I think the hardest thing was feeling like my high school experience was cut short. I didn't really get to finish high school properly because I missed those important events. Well, the strategies both of y'all gave me was mainly to have gratitude and just be grateful for the things that I was able to do before everything happened, like win a championship, got to go on this Kairos retreat, and we had like our school pep rally, gold white, at least like a week before school got shut down. So just be grateful that I had those things. Also journaling. You gave me the idea to journal just to get my thoughts out, just so I wasn't overthinking about everything that was going on. Parents play a huge role. I think the biggest thing for me that I didn't necessarily always have to come to you if I was like stressed out. Like you would recognize that something was off in my demeanor or just my body language. You'd like ask me, and then I'd tell you. And you always had great advice that would help me out a lot. Mindfulness, just like spending time to myself, no phone, no TV, just like being present and like grounding myself. So like meditation and mindfulness was key. Breathing helps me a lot, even now. If I'm just stressed out, even if I just take 5 deep breaths in the morning or at night, it definitely calms me down and helps like center myself and like my thoughts. Biggest piece of advice would probably be to talk to people. I know when I was at school last year, I was pretty much in my room alone most of the time, but talking to you and mommy and all my friends on the phone, that really helped me. And also journaling, that was key. Just whenever I felt like there was too much going on in my head and I was overthinking a lot, journaling really helped me get my thoughts out and like calm my brain. I found social media to be pretty harmful, especially when I was at school last year, just because it was my freshman year of college. All my friends were at school, and on social media, it looked like they were having a great time. And I wasn't having a great time, so it made me feel really bad. So social media for me has been harmful. And sometimes I even have to just like delete Instagram or Snapchat just to like get away from it because I know that when I look at it, it's only going to make me feel worse. I think social media is harmful just because there's so many expectations of girls. Like they want you to look a certain way. They want you to pose. Like you always have to be dressed up. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on girls that they always have to look their best or like always have to like maintain a certain weight or just look a certain way. And it really messes with people's self-esteem because if you look at an Instagram model on Instagram and you're like, oh, I don't look like her, and she is like millions of comments and likes, you're automatically going to compare yourself to her, and it's just going to mess with your self-esteem. I think the best way to manage social media is to just take a break from it. You don't have to take a break from all social media platforms. Like I'd say get rid of Instagram for a little bit and see how you feel. And you can still have Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter, whatever you want, but just like delete one at a time if you're trying to stop using it as much. And on our cell phones, like they have timers to like give you time to actually use like social media. So you could set a timer and say like, I'm only going to use social media for this hour and the rest of the day, I'm not going to use it. And so you're not necessarily getting rid of it completely, but like you're slowly weaning yourself off of it. Yeah, I think it's super important to talk to your parents whenever you're dealing with something, whether it's small or big, just because you can lean on them. They can give you great advice just to help you. And even if they don't know what to do, like they can find people who do know the answer and who can help you.
Great. That was Taylor. I really appreciated her taking the time to answer those questions. I hope the students got some insight in terms of the strategies that she used. They were very impactful for her. Right now, I want to talk about some of the common reactions to the new normal of COVID-19. Initially, I recall some of the children were kind of excited last year when, well, in 2020, when COVID started, that they were out of school. But then that excitement turned to sadness because we weren't going back to school. And a lot of the activities that the kids used to do, and even for us as adults, things that we couldn't do, our lives changed, the new normal set in, and we became disappointed with all the events being canceled. And definitely wearing the mask was a big inconvenience. and it caused a lot of uproar, even in society politically. It became a major political issue. I know for me at school, the kids don't like wearing masks. Some people don't like them wearing them at work. And even in public, it's a big issue. COVID-19, some of the reactions is that we're worried. We're worried about not knowing what's going to happen next. Even though we have the vaccine, there is still a lot of unknowns right now. And for some people like myself who have a anxiety issue, that could be a problem, just worrying incessantly about like what's going to happen next. Do my child have to take the vaccine? Is it safe? So I understand those types of worries. And it may lead to some frustration, feelings of annoyance, of being irritable. And just realize, guys, that these types of common reactions are normal. When our bodies feel unsafe or things are not sure and certain, we feel a great level of anxiety, some people more than others. So there may be some concerns, not only about yourself, about your family, but in particular about grandparents. Our grandparents really struggled a lot during COVID. I know relatives or friends who lost grandparents due to COVID, so it's really been hard on our elderly population. So I would say if you have a grandparent, please show them love. If you can be around them safely, do that. And lastly, I think there's still a lot of confusion around COVID and what the expectations are and what's safe and what's not safe. And we have to work all that out. Back when COVID first started in March of 2020, when I was sent home from school, and now my wife was freaking out and my daughter was panicking, I took a different mindset. I had a positive mindset that we were going to come out of it. I remember telling my wife, we're going to get a vaccine. There's smart people out there. We're going to get our lives back eventually, sooner than later. And I just constantly just used positive affirmations to her, conversations. My body language was positive. I didn't want to let her see me upset because she would have fed off that energy, as well as my daughter. I didn't want my daughter to see that her dad was upset. So I took a very positive stance. And in this article that I wrote, that I sent to the National Association for Social Workers, I sent 11 strategies that people could use. Some of them my daughter talked about in her video. Just focusing on breathing, guys. Breathing has a tremendous impact on lowering our stress levels. When we're stressed, we have a tendency to breathe real shallow from a place that causes a lot of anxiety. I've learned to do what they call deep belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing. You guys can look it up. When you do deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, it has a way of activating something called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest part of the nervous system. This will calm the body down. Lean on your faith, regardless of where your faith is. The research shows having a belief in a higher power has a way of grounding you, has a way of giving you a sense of calmness and peace. Lean on your faith, whatever that faith is. And also find a reliable source of information. There was a time once when my daughter came out of her room and she was terrified. I didn't know what was going on. This was back when we had attacked someone in Iraq, and there was a lot of this country had attacked someone in Iraq, killed one of their leaders. And there was a lot of talk on social media amongst her generation about we were going to have World War III. And me knowing as a person of my age that those types of things get blown way out of proportion, I said, Taylor, get off of the computer, disconnect from that. We're not going to war like that. It's not going to be World War II. Everybody wants to live around the world. And I basically told her, just find reliable sources of information to listen to and to respond to. Social media, listening to that and being engaged in that properly is important. My daughter talked about how social media has a way of impacting people's mental health. So young people, please be mindful of how that's impacting you, as well as us adults. Go outside on nature walks, bike rides. I love nature. I love going on bike rides, but more importantly, I love my nature walks. They've proven walking in green space has a wonderful impact on lowering pressure, easing your mind, reducing tension, just getting away from it all and just getting out in nature. Reading a good book. Good books are a great distraction from all the clutter in your mind. Find a good book and read it. And guys, it's okay to play. When COVID first started, I recall we were all locked down. My family would come together for family nights and we would play all types of games, Uno, bananagrams, and we just had a fun-filled time evening with the TVs off, with the cell phones put away, and we played, and it really connected us in a way we hadn't been connected in a long time. And most importantly, I love gratitude. Regardless of what you're going through in life, just finding something to be thankful for. I mean, we all have our struggles in life, but gratitude research shows it has a way, again, of minimizing stress, making you feel better about your life. Even though you're going through struggles, it's a great way of stress management. And be of service to others. My grandfather used to say, regardless of what you're going through, Darryl, he said, there's always someone worse off than you. Go out there and help them. And when my grandparents died, I was devastated. And I remember what they told me. And I started working with youth in my community. And they were right. It really changed how I felt. And it gave me a greater sense of purpose in life. In terms of, if you have personal struggles, whether it be the students or parents, use teletherapy. I'm a therapist. I do teletherapy. They could come right into your homes through your computer and provide teletherapy with any anxiety, depression, or mental health issue that you have. So reach out to someone, use teletherapy. And lastly, explore new ideas. They said during World War II, when the whole world was at war, some of our greatest inventions were created because creative minds came together to come up with ideas. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of new discoveries during this COVID-19 era. Okay, guys, mindful reflection. I love this exercise. And also, October is Emotional Awareness Month. With everything we've been through with COVID, it's time that we focus on our mental and emotional health. It's important that we reflect on our successes, our challenges, and have hopes and dreams for something positive to look forward to. The rose, thorn, bud activity is the perfect mindful reflection game. You can use it to get some perspective about yourself and understanding of what others are feeling. It's a great activity to use at home to start conversations about how you're feeling, to process your emotions. If you look at the slide, the first column is a rose. I want you guys to put your responses in the chat if you can. I want you to think about a recent success, something, it could have been recent or it could have been something that has happened during COVID. Put that in the chat. Anything. It could have been that you got an A on the test if you're a student. It could be that you passed your driver's test, something to highlight. And also the thorn, look at the middle column. The thorn metaphor is, I want you to think about some of the challenges that you're having right now in your life, something that's kind of prickly, that's hurting you, some adversity that you have to overcome. I want you to be able to think about what that is. And if you can put your answers in the chat, that would be great. And lastly, the bud. The bud is having a new idea of something you're looking forward to, of something to knowing or learning or understanding, some type of achievement. This activity is great for jogging your mind in terms of identifying your successes, becoming more aware of your challenges, and giving you hope for a better future with the bud. And I recommend that you guys use this at home to, as I said, to bring up a conversation about what's going on in your life. So if there are any responses in the chat right now, Elaine or Ms. Pearson, could you shout those out right now? Okay. The next, support your child during COVID. One of the things that I've learned is that being attuned with my child was very important, as well as my wife. And what does attunement mean? Attunement means just being aware. Like my daughter said, she said, Daddy, I didn't have to come to you. You knew how I was feeling. You were able to come to me and respond to me in a very responsive way. So attunement just being paying attention not only to your children, but to your spouses, to your relatives. Be observant. Look at their body language. Look at their tone of voice. Be responsive. But most importantly, be patient, because times are so stressful right now. Some of us have short fuses. And more importantly, be non-judgmental. Try not to let your judgment come in the way of how you intervene and help your loved ones. And most importantly, show up, parents. Show up for your kids right now who are struggling. We have to just, and I know as adults, we're going through a lot, but we have to be available for our kids. and to help them to co-regulate, meaning, as I said before, our kids' brains, the human brain doesn't develop fully until you were 25 years old. And so our children, even our young adults, need to borrow our brains and our ability to problem solve to help them problem solve. So help them to co-regulate. And in terms of communication, use I statements. That's something I had to learn to do in talking with my wife. I statements have proven very effective at keeping people from getting upset because you're not saying something in a disparaging, negative way. You're not saying you did this or you did that. You could say something like, I feel upset that you're not getting your room clean, or just use an I statement. And body language matters. They say 60 to 70% of our communication happens with body language. So it doesn't have to be how you say something verbally. Just be mindful of your body language, your tone of voice, and always communicate in a calm voice. And most importantly, collaborate with your child. Sometimes as adults, we want to be the authoritarians. I'm the adult. Do what I tell you to do. This is, I'm taking care of you. I'm paying the bills. You have to do what I tell you to do. I've learned, parents, that strategy doesn't always work. I've learned to collaborate with my children, meaning talking to them, helping them to problem solve, asking them what the challenge is, and working with them on that level has produced great results for me. And most importantly, be able to talk it out. Principles of communication. Use language that is direct and easy to understand, meaning don't talk around the bush, get straight to the point when you're saying something to your child, to your spouse, especially during these times when we're really stressed, but be mindful of saying it in a nice and caring way. Children don't learn well when they're stressed. There's a part of our brain called the executive function, which is in the front part of our brain. That fully doesn't develop until we're 25. And when we're stressed out, there's another part of our brain, which is older part of our brain called the amygdala. The amygdala, when it's activated, when we're stressed out, it shuts down the rational part of our brain with decision-making, planning, getting along with others. It shuts that down completely. So if you're trying to talk to your child when they're stressed out, that part of their brain where they can respond and listen to you is offline. So you have to talk to them when they're not in the stress states. As well as parents, don't explain things when you're stressed as well. The same rule goes for you. When you're stressed, try not to have a conversation or engage with your child or your wife or husband when you're stressed, because when you're stressed, your amygdala is activated as well. Talking with and supporting your children. Guys, parents, initiate the conversation. Sometimes as parents, it's hard for us to initiate a conversation with our child because sometimes that's a myth. Our teenagers can be moody and it's kind of hard sometimes to engage and connect with them, but we have to do it still. Ask them, what have they heard if they're dealing with something? Ask them how they're feeling, what questions they may have. How is it affecting them? I did a lot of those things with my daughter when she was going through the COVID crisis when it first occurred. Connect with them. Don't pretend everything is okay. Sometimes we want to pretend everything is okay. And when we let these types of situations go, they fester and then they blow up into bigger problems. They can tell us when we are not genuine or honest. In other words, our kids know us. They know when we're being fake and when we're being real. So just be honest and genuine. And lastly, be developmentally appropriate with your honesty. Some kids are younger. If you have younger children or siblings, 8, 9, you can't talk to them the same way you would talk to an older, a teenager. So use developmentally appropriate language. Some kids have a difficult time talking. Use books or even have them sketch out how they feel. And most importantly, give them space. Acknowledge how they feel. Give them time to process how they feel. And I learned that stepping away and giving kids and youth time to process their feelings, they come back later on and they're more available to share how they're feeling. This is an important area here. Identify healthy and unhealthy coping. Some of us during COVID-19 we've done some healthy things. We've been able to talk it out. My daughter talked about journaling about her anxieties. I've done a lot of exercising, taking mental health days from work. Most importantly, be kind to yourself. Use positive self-talk. Tell yourself that this too shall pass. And most importantly, stay in the present. Sometimes our minds have a tendency of just moving way ahead into the future and catastrophizing about all the things that could go wrong. Stay grounded, stay in the present, use mindfulness to focus on what's going on in the present. And make a schedule. Make a schedule, whether you're a student or adult. I've learned is a great way of getting organized that reduces the stress. And some of the unhealthy ways that people have engaged in, people have talked about COVID-19 putting on that 15 pounds. Some people have been binge eating junk food, catastrophizing, as I said, thinking worst case scenarios. You have to be careful not to do that. Procrastinating. Stress has a way of making us put off things that we need to do. And some of us are so stressed that we're not getting enough sleep. Did you know that when we're really stressed, our cortisol, the stress hormone levels go way up. And when that goes up, the hormone that puts us to sleep, melatonin at night, it goes down. So if you're really stressed and you're wondering why you can't sleep and you're turning and testing all night, it's because you need to do a better job at managing stress. And lastly, excessive time spent on social media. Please, guys, if social media is causing you some angst and stressing you out, find a way to give yourself a break. Some strategies for talking to your child during stressful times. And some of these things I've already mentioned. Parents, help your children process difficult feelings, their anxieties, their worries, concerns, and fears by being attuned. Again, be responsive. It's okay to normalize their anxieties, guys. These anxieties, these fears or worries we all have, it's normal to feel this way when things and tensions are high in society as it relates to COVID and other types of real serious issues. It's the mind and body's way of reacting to this stressful stuff. And parents, help your child again. I'm going to keep coming back to that, co-regulate their emotions. They need you. They need you during this time. They need you more than ever. So help them to co-regulate. And again, use developmentally appropriate language or book to explain or discuss the issue. That's important. So lastly, I'm going to share this last slide. This is a slide of my son when he was in high school at the Landing School. We grew up in a very rough neighborhood in the city of DC. Dealt with a lot of drugs, crime, violence. My son lost a lot of friends who died dealing with drugs back in the day. At times, I didn't think we would make it out, and he was trying to get into the Ivy League, and Channel 5 News did this interview, and I'm going to say to the students, scholars on this call, whether it be dealing with a stressful neighborhood or family issue or COVID or challenges in school, please stay on the train. So let's watch the video.
A local high school basketball standout is locked to play college hoops. He also volunteers pushing other kids to reach their goals. But his journey to get here has not been easy. He grew up facing challenge after challenge in DC's inner city. Fox 5's Dave Benz explains why the advice, stay on the train, is helping him accomplish his dreams.
His game is undeniable. But ask Landon coach Andy Luther about the attributes of Christian Webster, and basketball isn't even close to the first thing he throws out.
He goes about earning good grades. He goes about helping the community, working with little kids, playing basketball, doing his training all the time.
See, as terrific as Webster is on the court, he's every bit as solid off of it. An honor roll student who wants to be a role model.
What more could you ask for a kid that's just 18 years old to want to help younger people? Most kids would rather think about enjoyment themselves and doing fun things, but he's always looking to help someone else, and so that makes me feel good.
It should. After all, Christian's dad, Darryl, a former DC high school hoop star in his own right and current social worker, taught Christian everything he knows, tutoring him at an early age to strive for a life beyond the inner city DC streets, where both he and Christian are from, the same streets from which many of Christian's childhood friends never escaped.
My dad always tells a story about the train, and when I was first born, the train kept moving, and just by playing basketball, the train keeps moving. And when I was 6, those boys that came on the train with me, and some of them got off, some of them dead in jail on drugs, but the train is still moving for me.
And the journey has been laudable.
He's not only well known because he's the big, tall basketball player and so easy to see around here, but he knows the kids, from camp. He knows the kids from being over in the lower school and helping out with those guys over there. So they all have an interest in him. I just try to help those kids get on the train, as you could say, and just keep them on there as long as possible.
Christian plans to continue his mentoring as an Ivy League college student next season. And yes, dreams of a bigger role model platform someday in the NBA.
I think anything could happen as long as you work hard, stay focused, stay on that train. I think anything could happen.
Either way, Christian Webster is already a true star. From Landon High School, Dave Benz.
Thank you, guys. Now we're going to go to the question and answer period.
Julian Perez, I see you have your hand raised. You can unmute yourself and ask the question. If you do not want to ask your question publicly, you can also write them in the chat and we will share your questions as well. So the question is, how is your son now?
My son, guys, is doing fantastic. I'm so proud of him. He is one of the top 30 college basketball coaches in the country at Virginia Tech. He's been considered for many coaching jobs around the country. I'm just so proud of him in so many ways. So thanks for asking the question.
Ms. Ray, go ahead.
Hi, so I have a question. So I know with COVID, a lot of people were like stressed and all that stuff. So I kind of feel like I'm a little awkward. Like I'm the opposite. Definitely dealing with people like dying and the whole pandemic was scary. But I'm having more anxiety and more, I guess, stress entering back, like the kids back in school and running around like I'm crazy on the weekends and during the day and the traffic. Do you have any tips for coping with stress? I guess coming out of a pandemic, I guess the pandemic was hard, but I got a time to stop and, like you said, play games with my kids and regroup and get family time. But now I'm back running around like I'm crazy, so many events and soccer and karate. It's just a lot. So do you have any tips on post-pandemic, or I can't even say we're post-pandemic, but just going back to normal?
Yes, I mean, that's a great question. And I definitely can identify with what you're going through, Mom. It sounds like you're an amazing mother, putting your kids first with all the different tasks and things that you have to do. But one of the things, I love the example that they use when we fly on a plane. The flight attendants always say if you're traveling with young children, to put the mask on yourself if the plane loses oxygen, because you have to be available for your children. So what I'm saying to you is that you have to put some self-care in your life. Put yourself first. Find time to pamper yourself. Find some quiet time. Go to a part of your house where you can meditate, to find just a small piece of quiet to bring some normalcy to your life. Your schedule is your schedule, and I know you have to do that, but you have to put that oxygen mask on yourself, take care of yourself. We're not out of the pandemic yet, so we're still dealing with some of those anxieties, but a lot of those anxieties that you have are very normal. But go out and walk out in nature. Most importantly, I love meditation music. You can go to YouTube, listen to YouTube videos. I love all of the meditation videos on YouTube. Just anything you can do that's practical with your schedule to just give yourself some peace and show yourself some grace, because it sounds like you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Michelle Wu.
Hi, Darryl. Thanks so much for sharing your story today. I really appreciate it. And I also got a copy of your book and found it really inspirational.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that. I wanted to ask you, as adults, you mentioned oftentimes we are leaders for our teams. We are members of our community organizations, parents to our children, and oftentimes role models. And you mentioned the example of where initially when COVID hit, you maintained that positive mindset for your wife and your daughter. How do you balance having that positive mindset but with also, being authentic to your true feelings at that time of, the anxiety around like ambiguity. So how do you balance that between like motivating others and also staying true and authentic to yourself?
That's a great question, a very deep question. But I would say, I mean, that varies from individual to individual. But I had gone through so much in my life if you read my book, I'd gone through so much adversity and trauma and toxic stress as a young person. That gave me some post-traumatic growth. So I brought that post-traumatic growth into my relationship with my daughter and my wife. And so I had some experiences to use to support them. And if we know anything about history, regardless if you look at all of the terrible things that happened in society and around the world, it was always those people who had that tough interior, that emotional grit and determination that regardless of what happened, that they were going to overcome it. And I believe that is the elixir, that is the thing that changes terrible things into positive things. And we all have that capacity to find that hope during so-called hopeless situations. And that's the only thing that can overturn any adversity that we all are going through. It depends on that growth mindset, that belief mindset. And when you have that, you can change things. I just can't say it enough how important it is that people just have hope during times where most people give up. Those are the people that typically succeed.
Thank you. Like having that resilience and really
Yes.
reframing it into a growth opportunity.
Yes, and if you're around a bunch of negative people, you gotta get away from those people. You gotta latch on to some people who are positive, who believe that they can do things, because my grandparents used to say, birds of a feather flock together. And that was so true. I mean, I've seen it in my life. I've seen kids that I grew up with go to jail, go to prison because they hung out with the wrong crowds. When I began to gravitate towards smart people and people with good values and good family values, my whole trajectory of my life changed. The trajectory of my kids' lives changed. So I'm just saying, you are as good and as great as the 5 people you socialize with.
Wow, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Michelle Conti.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to hear this amazing presentation. I am a mom with a child who has ADHD and executive functioning issues, and I provide as much support as humanly possible in terms of meds, counseling, 504 at school, and sometimes it just seems like this is not enough. And so I'm just looking for additional strategies to really help my son develop, to make wise decisions at all times, especially when he's bored, to cut down on the impulse. And then, are there any support groups for parents? Because mom gets burned out. Mom, I get to the point sometimes I just don't know what else to do.
Yeah. Oh, Michelle, my heart goes out to you. I understand to a certain degree what you're feeling. I'm a social worker. I've worked in special ed all of my life. I've had kids with ADHD, kids with neurodevelopmental challenges throughout my career. Those are some of the most wonderful, most intelligent kids that you have in the school system. They just have challenges with impulse control, self-regulation. If they have the combined type where they're hyperactive, then they're bouncing all over the place. But let me say that it's most important that you do what I know you're doing already. Just give your child tons of love. Be patient. Show him the grace that he deserves. There's some research to show in some cases, some kids with ADHD, they grow out of it. I know some adults who had it as children and it got better as time went on. I'm going to give you a book that I highly recommend, Gabor Mate, M-A-T-E. And look at some of his YouTube videos on ADHD. He has a book called Scattered Minds. Scattered Minds. But look at his YouTube videos on ADHD, because he has a different opinion about the causes of ADHD. He doesn't believe that it is a diagnosis or an illness that's genetically caused. he believes that it's caused by different things regarding the childhood types of developmental issues. But go to Gabor Mate, look at his YouTube videos. I guarantee you, once you look at his videos on ADHD and get his book, it will open your mind about how to support your child with ADHD and other kids with neurodevelopmental issues in a very responsive, nurturing, and caring way. But Mom, sounds like you're doing a great job. Get that research, and I promise you, you won't regret it.
I was taking notes, sorry. Karen Thompson.
Thank you for taking my question. And thank you, Darryl Webster, for this enlightening workshop. Very informative. Thank you so much. My question or comment has to do with the generation gap between my generation, because I'm a grandparent dealing with a school-age child. So I help my son raise my granddaughter. And there's this generational gap that I wasn't raised like that. And that's what I say to myself often. Between social media and YouTube and all of the things that they're involved in, for me, there's this big gap in how I was raised and how I see my granddaughter and how she's growing up. And so it causes stress for me because I have to manage my thoughts and manage my reactions to her behavior. Not that it's bad behavior, but it's very different for me and how I was raised and how I raised my children. So I need coping skills to adjust to that.
Hey, Karen, I identify with you. I'm a grandparent too, and I don't get the younger generation. I was raised by my grandparents, old school Southern values from the South. You wake up in the morning, you say, good morning, please, thank you. And you got kids nowadays, they get on the bus, they don't get a seat to the elderly people. You got some people, like some neighborhoods I'm going, you got some kids who are cursing around. It's a lot of crazy stuff. But I will say, I've learned that there are generational codes, and there are books on generational code breaking. I recommend that you Google the different books on generational code breaking. Once you understand how to break the generational code, it will give you some language, some verbiage to be able to say things in a way where you can connect with them. One thing I learned, like with this generation, you guys know this, my youngest daughter's generation, they grew up tethered to a cell phone. They don't know no other way of communicating other than a cell phone. I was at the airport one time and I saw a group of soccer players, like 15 girls. They're all sitting together in a group and none of them are looking at each other talking. They all are on the cell phone. And I'm like, you right beside each other, have a conversation. And we grew up having conversations with each other. And so what I'm saying to you is, I understand the frustration. It's just the values that we were raised in have gotten watered down so tremendously because of, my opinion, terrible things on TV, videos, some of the language and the graphics, stuff I never heard when I was a kid. These kids are using language and being exposed to stuff at younger and younger ages, and it has really had a negative impact on their psyche, how they view the world. And even as an older person now, I'm starting to feel people looking at me like, oh, you're old, like you don't belong here anymore. And I'm like, what is going on? I was raised, I revered elderly people. To this day, when I see an elderly person, I have so much reverence for them because my grandparents, I put them on the biggest pedestal. But this generation, it's not all of them, because I didn't raise my kids like that. My kids love everybody. And I'm sure a lot of the parents in the car are raising their kids like that. So I'm just so emotional about this topic because I feel what you're saying. Generational code will give you some language in terms of how to connect with your younger generations, and they will respond to you more because they don't have the patience that you and I have. They want everything in these soundbite, quick types of responses. Even when I talk to my daughter sometimes, they're like, Daddy, come on, like get to the point. So a lot of this stuff is generational code. So I hope I answered your question in some way.
Yes, thank you for addressing it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mrs. Walters.
I just wanted to say that Michelle Wu, I'm boasting, I'm bragging right now. Michelle Wu, who asked the question a couple of people ago, is an alum of our scholars program at NYU. She's an undergraduate of the NYU program and has been very supportive of AnBryce. Anything I ask her to do, as Leanna and Eileen can attest, she does it, and she does it so thoroughly and with loyalty and dedication. So thank you, Michelle, for being on.
Yeah, and she currently works for Google.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Is it possible? Okay.
There's another question.
We have one more, Halima.
Yes, it's not a question per se. I just want to thank the whole team, including Mr. Webster. This has been very informative. We really appreciate it. I have 11-year-old that was very, very looking forward to get this program coming back on, and we are excited to be on it. Having people like you come on is some of the reason we need to be there, so they can hear from that outside person from the house who's the parent and can understand from another version besides our voices. So we do appreciate everybody who sponsored this program, and I look forward to continue with it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Halima. Thank you.
Can I say something? Darryl, well, first of all, this cannot be a one-shot deal. We're going to have you come back, because I think that you have impressed upon the participants of this call that there's a need for what you do. And reading some of the comments that I'm getting from people on chat, this is not, you have to come back. So we'll have to arrange for you to come back for the second phase. Okay.
Yes, I'd love to. Can I just say one thing before I go? I just thank the world of you, Mrs. Welters, you and your husband, what you have done for these children since 1995. When I first heard about your story, it touched me. It touched me. We need more people, Black people in particular, who take the helm to support students like my kids who don't have the resources to see and go and travel to places that you provide for your kids. Your Camp Dogwood just blows my mind. I mean, I wish more kids from the inner city, from where I come from, could get out in nature and go to a camp and see the outdoors and be connected in that way. And you guys are a godsend. I thank God sent you guys to me for a reason. You're a blessing. I just wanted to tell you that my grandparents said, give your loved ones roses while they're living and not when they're dead. And I'm just giving you a big bouquet of roses right now, Ms. Welters. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I just want to say to you as well, as you know, we're always recruiting. And if you come across a family that you think would benefit from our program, please let us know.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I will. Thank you, everybody.